This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, where we celebrate the role players, the underdogs, and you know it, the great stories in sports. And our Moonlighter for today is a voice and a name that you are well familiar with at this point. It is Sam Meuret. And so Sam and I, we have been doing the pod together for, I think this might be our fifth or sixth time that Sam has been on the pod. And if you've been listening to the pod for a while, you know that I caddy for Sam. Sam is probably the best golfer that I know. And a few years ago, he was playing in the U.S. amateur qualifying. And I just threw out there, hey, if you ever need a caddy at one of these tournaments you're playing in, I would love to do it. You know, I didn't grow up playing competitive golf. I've picked up golf in my 20s and 30s, and I play quite a bit when I can, but I'd never really experienced a competitive tournament. I thought it might be fun to experience a competitive tournament while carrying the bag for the best golfer I know, Sam. And we've had a ton of fun doing this, and of course, we always record a podcast to go along with these tournaments that Sam plays in. So the most recent one that Sam played in was the U.S. Open Local Qualifier, which took place back in April, and actually the tournament was in our backyard here at Glen Oaks Country Club in West Des Moines. And, you know, newsflash here, the U.S. Open already happened. Sam did not play in it. If he did play in it, you would have known by now, trust me. But I caddied for Sam. It was a great day on the course. Unfortunately, Sam didn't make it out of that day. But I think the story of that day is worth the price of admission and worth the listen to this podcast, because he and I, as a tandem, we had a lot of fun that day. We experienced a couple of things that we had not yet experienced. And even though we didn't move on to the final qualifying of the U.S. Open, I really think Sam in particular, but then our relationship as player and caddy is really starting to hit his stride. And I'm not joking. I'm going to throw out a prediction there. I think while I still have this podcast going, Sam is going to play in either a U.S. Open, a U.S. Amateur, or like a big-time national tournament. That's my prediction. I have that much faith and hope in Sam, and he continues to get better and better. You guys are going to want to listen to this because it's kind of a heartbreaking end to that tournament, but it's a lot of fun. It makes for good podcasting. So enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter, Sam Meuret. Moonlighters, are you or someone you know moving down to Kansas City? Well, if you are, the one realtor that we trust and yet you need to be calling is the great Brian Samvig. As you well know, Brian Samvig is our producer here on the podcast, and there is not a better residential real estate advisor down in the Kansas City marketplace than Brian Samvig. Call Brian Samvig, shoot him a text. Hey, DM us on social media. We'll get you connected with Brian if you can't find him on all the socials, but he is there and he is active, and he is your Kansas City realtor, so give him a call. Season 14 of the pod, longtime Moonlighter, one of the MVPs, one of the OGs, Sam Meuret. Sam, welcome back. What do you think about being the first Moonlighter on season 14?
Feels really good.
This is our longest hiatus. It's been about 4 months since we've last had an episode. A lot of debate over how to kick off this season of the pod, and I thought, you know what? You and I have been sitting on a story for the last couple of months here. It needs to be shared with the Moonlight Graham audience. These are always really popular episodes, so welcome back. Happy you're here.
Thank you. It had been a while, and I started to think, I think he's over these. I thought it would happen 3 tournaments ago, but I thought it was a good run. I think he's done.
So, not done. It's U.S. Open week. So, as folks who have been following this pod for a while, you know that I caddy for Sam. Sam is the player. I am the caddy. It's a very subservient relationship from my end, but I've come to enjoy it. And the local qualifier was back in April, so about 2 months ago exactly. And we kind of thought we'd be in a different place this week. We didn't think that we'd be sitting here on my back deck kicking off season 14 of the pod. We thought we'd be doing practice rounds in California this week, but it wasn't in the cards.
No, it wasn't. I think this is the second time we've done it during U.S. Open week.
Yeah.
Too. Just a sad podcast. A good time, but a bit sad to be sitting here in West Des Moines during U.S. Open week.
So on previous podcasts, I compared you to Randy Johnson. You remember that? Our good friend Ryan Turner.
Is the nicest thing anybody's ever said about me.
And the analogy goes back to when Randy Johnson was at USC. Randy Johnson threw like 105 miles an hour. He was a 6'11 lefty. He was all over the place, and he was just pure potential. But he just had not figured out how to pitch yet. And at the time, Mark McGwire was also a USC baseball player on that same team, and Mark McGwire was actually a better pitcher in college than Randy Johnson. Mark McGwire pitched in college, but not many people knew that. But then as Randy Johnson goes into the major leagues, he's walking the world all through up the in the Expos minor league system, and then 15 years later, really like in his early 30s, figures out how to be a pitcher, and then pitches into his 40s, and really is the best left-handed modern-day pitcher that we have ever seen. I think it's a pretty good analogy for you, but it might be giving your talent a little too much credit. Randy Johnson is on like the Mount Rushmore of pitchers everywhere. But here's maybe a more apt analogy, even though it might still be a little bit out there, but I think it's closer. Curt Schilling. So Curt Schilling, when he came up with the Baltimore Orioles. Then he was a flamethrower, threw 100 miles an hour, but was not a refined pitcher. He gets traded to the Houston Astros. He was getting better. Then he goes to the Philadelphia Phillies in the early 90s, ends up winning a World Series for the Phillies, and is starting to harness his talent, goes on to the Diamondbacks and becomes one of the best pitchers in baseball in his early 30s. Him and Randy Johnson, to tie things together, they have like this 1-2 combination where they win a World Series. It's incredible. Curt Schilling was amazing. And then by Curt Schilling's later years, when he's 37, 38, 39 years old, he doesn't quite have the fastball he once did, but he's still an all-star caliber pitcher. He should be in the Hall of Fame. Like, that is Curt Schilling. I think that is you.
I think you might still be reaching a little bit.
I might be, but I think that is maybe a closer one because like Randy Johnson's so out there because he's 6'11". But I think Schilling might be better. But that is to say, where I think you are in your career right now is like in the Houston Astros era of Curt Schilling. Like we're in the major leagues, but we still got lots of things to work out.
What you're saying is I walked a bunch of people a month and a half ago.
Yeah,
it was not a good.
There are still pitching coaches that are pulling their hair out every time that you go to the mound. So let's go back to April, right? So the U.S. Open local qualifier. It's right here in our backyard at Glen Oaks Country Club, one of the nicer tracks in the state of Iowa. A course that Sam, how familiar were you with Glen Oaks heading into that?
I think I had played it twice.
Oh, okay. I was assuming you were a little bit more.
Twice in 9 holes once. So I hadn't played it much.
What'd you think about it heading in at just the course? Like, oh, it's at Glen Oaks. Here's how I feel going into it, even, local course.
It sort of rhymes with the type of course that I don't play well at, but there was enough room. It's kind of like I don't do well when you put a lot of water, a lot of tall grass, a lot of out of bounds. Like, that's not my deal. I need to have a little room to miss. Usually, because I'm gonna have a couple drives, and I did. They go wildly offline, and I need those to just be in play. I can be punished for them, but not like lost ball, water, blah blah blah. But Glen Oaks had enough room that I actually thought, like, my impression of it before playing a practice round for this was that it was pretty narrow, tighter than it was. And then I played a practice round, and there really is room out there. It's not that narrow. So I actually thought it was a decent fit.
So liked the course, didn't love it, had some familiarity, but it wasn't like, oh, this is my type of course. Like, I guess Blue Top last year, you pull into the driveway or the parking lot and we say, who's getting second? Which in hindsight.
Yeah. I would have loved second in hindsight. But, that one was, I was telling you for 2 straight hours on the drive to Iowa City, if the grass is cut short,
it's over.
It's over. And we pull in, grass was cut short.
It's
like we're not going to lose any golf balls. If I hit a wayward drive, we're going to be able to find it. We'll hack it out. We can play it from there. And it was cut short, but that was the least of my worries that day.
So the wind that day was blowing really hard. The thing about 2 months ago at the local at Glen Oaks, the wind was also blowing.
Yeah.
It was blowing as hard as it was at Blue Top, if not a little bit harder. I don't know. We debated this on the course. Blue Top might have been blowing a little bit harder, but it was so cold along with the wind. It was freezing cold, might have been in the low 40s with gusts up to 50 miles an hour that day.
It was a worse day for sure.
Yeah. I guess my first optimistic thought, outside of just hoping I dressed warm, I was not there with like winter gloves on. I didn't have a winter coat on. I just was layered up, but I wanted to get a work in, right? I wanted to be out there. It really always bugged me as a baseball player when you see guys with like the hoods on and everything. It's like, I'm still an athlete, right? And when you showed up, you were kind of dressed similarly to me. And I thought, oh, Sam and I are on the same wavelength. Because a lot of guys, they had the winter gloves on, they had the stocking caps on. And my first thought is like, those guys are already mentally out of it because they're thinking too much about the cold.
There's a fine line between underdressing and being knocked out for that, and then overdressing. There's only so much you can put on and still swing, so it's like there aren't that many options to go.
What was your thought around like how many layers do I need to wear?
Just as many as I could, and still feel like I could swing. So I think I had 3 on. 4 is where it gets.
Yeah, but
tough.
is there any superstition with it? Like, I can't wear a hoodie or I can't wear this because, like, I just don't feel right. I don't feel like a golfer.
Hoodies bother me. Like I can't swing in them because the hood just kind of swings around, and I think about that. And so basically, like, it's pullover, and then you can wear an undershirt because those sort of bother me, but there's really no way around it because it was it was pretty cold.
So we're going to Glen Oaks. First hole. I think your range session, it was more about, from my perspective, seeing how much the wind was doing with the ball. At least when I was watching you, I was more curious, not so much as how Sam is hitting it, but wow, the wind is really blowing it from left to right on that range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice. I like warming up in a wind that's bad, so it's sort of in and off the left. And if it's downwind, you think you're hitting everything perfect. And so if the wind's kind of into you or off one side, you can really tell where you're hitting it because it was like a rope hook is a straight ball, basically, on the range. And so you can kind of get a feel for how much it's affecting it and which way you're shaping it really well.
I liked our group when we get to the first hole because we knew ahead of time, we knew what the pairings were. And we knew that we were paired with Tripp Kinney. And Tripp Kinney is a guy who played at Iowa State and has played professionally, still playing professionally, some.
Yeah.
And so we knew, like, oh, there's going to be a really, really good player in our group. So we know if he's playing well, if you're playing well, we know we're going to be in the mix. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not going to be like we're with a couple of bums and we could be up, you know, killing them, but not really have a good barometer. The other guy in our group was a guy from northern Iowa. I looked up his name. I'm not going to say it. His swing looked like he had the Bryson DeChambeau clubs. Like the way Bryson like has his arms locked out and it looks like all the clubs are the same length.
Yeah. That's
what it looked like to me.
I'm trying to think of the name of that swing, and honestly, you've rattled me because I don't remember the third guy we played with. It's been long enough. I don't remember.
Well, I'll tell you because I had to jog.
You don't have to tell me. It's not.
I won't tell you his name.
I don't remember his game.
I forgot him too, and I had to look his name up. And once I heard his name, I remembered him. His first like 4 holes were so bad that I thought it was a joke. Like I remember saying to you, "Do you think he's going to peel off after 9?" I thought he was going to give up because he was so bad. The funny thing was he played a pretty good back 9.
I think. It might have been one of the situations where we said, like, hey, check out this guy. And then he was, like, maybe beating me through 4 holes. close, way too close for comfort through a few holes.
Well, so speaking of that, we par number 1, which is a good sign. The first time I caddied for you, you bogeyed number 1. You hit it in the sand trap on the first hole. I was standing right behind you on the putt. It was just a bad start to our relationship. We parred number 1, so feeling pretty good about that. I thought the wheels were falling off shortly after that, and I thought it was just going to be a really long day on the golf course. So number 2, bogey. Number 3, double. Number 4, bogey. So you're 4 over through 4 holes. Mm-hmm. What are you thinking after 4 holes when you're 4 over and potentially out of the mix? Because at that point, I think Tripp might have been 1 under after 4, and you were 4 over. So you're already
he was even or 1 under.
5 down.
Yeah. It's so early that you still kind of think you have it, like, you can kind of piece together a round after that. But I also pretty much thought it was over at that point. Because if you start that bad, it's like the odds of it really turning around here not great.
Yeah, because also the weather wasn't getting noticeably better. You knew it was going to be a long day regardless. I think things started to turn around a little bit for us on the 7th hole. So you parred 5, you parred 6, you get to the 7th hole, and you pull out a birdie. You pull out a birdie, you made a really long putt, reminiscent of your brother Matt, right? Made a long putt. And you were the first one to putt. You make the putt. And then Tripp, who like was so solid up into that point, the wind kind of got to him, and the wind was gusting so hard that, and I haven't talked to Tripp about this, but it looked to me like it was in his head a little bit, and he ended up 4-putting.
I think he chipped on from just short, maybe, and then, or maybe he putted off the fringe. But yeah,
it was bad. Like he missed two really short ones,
and I had on 2 and 4. I missed 2 of among the shortest putts I've ever missed in my competitive golfing life. Like I've missed some short putts. I'm not the world's greatest putter, but these are like short putts, like absolute, just on a regular day, you just step up and tap them in. And I walked off 4, and I said, Tim, I think I hit an okay putt there. Like, I think the wind is blowing so hard, and they're so fast that, like, the ball just blew across the hole. Like, I didn't hit. It was a straight putt, and it just broke way off the left. And so after I made the putt on 7, and then watching him 3-putt, because he had putted, his putting just looked very good. Like, he's going to out-putt me all day today. And he made a couple nice putts, and then I think he 3-putted, I know, from about 5 feet, and I thought, like, oh, I might be, like, those were still bad putts by me, but it was more of a, like, everyone's going to struggle with these, because this guy does not, like, I'm watching him putt, he doesn't 3-putt from 5 feet unless, like, something very serious is going wrong.
Right, and at that point, you're 3 over, and I think he went to like 1 or 2 over at that point. So it's like, oh, we're within striking distance. We're still on the front 9. And then you end, so that was 7, and then you par 8, and then 9's a par 5 that you birdied. So you get it to 2 over at the turn, and with the weather clearly being really, really bad, we felt pretty good about 2 over at the turn. Like, we didn't feel great. We didn't feel like, oh, my gosh, we're in it. But we're like, can you believe we're only 2 over? Because your first 4 holes were bad.
Yeah. In between those 2 incredibly short par putts that I missed, I hit a drive so far right and barely was in bounds. Hit the next one. I forgot
about this.
Hit the next one so far right. And then made a mess of it from there, missed like a 6-footer for bogey. And so it was just such a disaster and felt so bad to me that it felt like I was 10 over. But then once I got it through 9 and got it back to 2, it's like 2 over is actually a respectable score. If I made 7 pars and 2 bogeys, I'd be like, okay, I'm fine. And so it just felt so bad for those 3 holes that I think we were more in it than maybe it seemed like.
Right.
It seemed like you shouldn't be able to recover from, like, if you watch me play those 3 holes, it's like this guy should just be eliminated. They should take him off the course. He can't finish this round.
And I should say, not to toot my own horn here, but at this point, I think 5th time caddying for you. Tripp's got his dad on the bag. The other guy didn't have a caddy. I'm running circles around the competition out there. I mean, I'm getting every pin. We're talking the wind a lot. It's not like I'm being this huge resource to you, but like compared to everybody else's caddy up there, I think I'm in the top tier of caddies when it comes to local qualifiers.
I would agree.
Thanks.
I will, not to keep backing this up to range and holes on the front 9, but on the range I told you, I said, Tim, I'm going to hit high fades and low draws. If I tell you I'm going to do anything other than those 2, I want you to take the club out of my hand. Do not let me try to hit a high draw or a low fade. And then we stood on, I think it was 6th fairway, and I said, okay, like I'm just going to try to like snap hook this like low 8-iron. It's from 125 yards, and I'm trying to hit an 8-iron 175 or 180 with a low draw. And I think after I hit the shot, we're walking up to the green because I didn't love my shot. It was a little left. And you said, did you say low draws or high draws? I thought I gave you one very specific
The whole
task.
time after you said that to me, I was standing behind you and I was like, is this where I'm supposed to step in and stop him? I can't remember if you said high draws or low draws.
You're back there on the range worried about stuffing my towel in your bib and my yardage finder that I could never find. You're stuffing that in your bib. in the one direction I gave you.
That's true, but I had it right.
You asked me.
I asked you after.
Yeah.
But I didn't step in.
You correctly didn't call me off.
I did not.
But
step
it was
in.
worrisome that was 90 minutes after we had started the round.
I had a lot on my mind because, like I said, I had to get every pin. Like some of these, I was like hustling to get the pins. Yeah. And the other thing is, you had to mark those balls quick because with the way the wind was blowing, like we kind of had to hustle to mark stuff. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of work, as a team. So we start the back nine. You're at 2 at the turn. You bogey 10. And then you par 11. And 11, wasn't that one you had just an atrocious drive?
I bet.
Sam, this is the one
I bet I was 120 yards off the fairway on 11. I hit some bad shots. Every time I play, I'm going to hit some bad shots. I'm going to hit some shots that make you think I don't deserve to be there. And that I don't think I've ever stunned you with a shot before, but it was like the wind was in and off the left and kind of a narrow fairway. And I was thinking a lot about the weeds left. I was thinking a lot about the weeds right. And I've never seen you just stunned by a shot I hit. But this ball got up in the air, and it's clearly like I heeled it a little bit. It starts loosely close to the fairway, and it's already turning right and gets caught up in the wind. And the ball, I thought it may never come down.
It kept going to the right to the point where it's one of those tee boxes where you're supposed to walk off the front of it, and we had to walk off 90 degrees to the right, and we had to like pass through like 2 other holes and groups to find, and we found the ball.
Yeah.
And it was one of those times like we were joking on the way. Like we were laughing going through this ball because we're thinking it's over now.
Yeah.
Like, we had a little bit of a comeback, but it's clearly over, and we've got to wait for like multiple groups to play different holes just to have a path to hit it back at the hole we're on. And I think that really loosened us up, frankly. And you hit a great next shot.
I hit a full 6-iron almost directly back at the fairway because we were back into the wind. And I basically just pointed myself perpendicular with the fairway and hit it straight back at it.
Yeah, I'm doing one of those things where I'm like running 100 yards up to show you the line and then running back. And remember there was a mom that we saw on that hole that was like, "Can you point me to number 8?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's right over here." Yeah. Which hole are you guys on? We're 2 holes over this way.
Well, my ball's on 8. I'm on 11.
Yeah. But after that hole, you par this par 5, and granted, you should be birdieing par 5s with your length. That's the goal. Is we're playing under par on the par 5s, but you parred, and both guys were like, "Nice par. Did you par that?" Like they couldn't believe that you got a 5 on that hole.
I couldn't believe it,
and so that was a win. But then we bounce back. You bogey the next hole. You bogey 12 to go back to 4 over. So once again, you go to 4 over, but then you birdie 13. So you get it back to 3. And at that birdie, that was the first time I looked at the scoreboard. So I'm like, we're at the 13th hole. You're 3 over. Let's look at the scoreboard because I doubt anybody's under par. That was my thought. Is like, okay, 3 over. If we can get to maybe 1 over or 2 over, we might have a chance. And at that point, there were a couple of guys at even and then a couple of guys at 1 over. And I remember saying to you at that point, I was like, "Hey, I just checked the scoreboard. Do you want to know?" And what is your thought around knowing the leaderboard?
I don't really. I'm sort of indifferent about it because for the most part, especially on a day like that day, there's nothing I could do special. Like there was no, if the cut's 5 over and I'm 4, there's no protecting a lead or like you're trying to survive a little bit because every shot has just such a wide variance to it that like there was no part of me moving forward that could change anything. There was nothing I could lay up for. There was nothing. I just had to play the holes in front of me. So I don't even remember what I said to you at that point if I asked to see it or if I asked later. But
no,
I don't really have
I said to you, you're like, "Just tell me." Like you wanted to know right away. So anyway, we knew we were in the mix. And I remember thinking, like, we probably said it too, like, "Hey, man, if we can get to 2, like, we got a real shot here." So we go to 14. And 14 was a long par 3 over water directly into the wind. And it was actually the only tee box that they moved that day. But they moved that tee box up slightly to make it easier because the wind was so rough. And we debated on the club for quite a while. We were like debating between like
This
even
was your best call. It was a 2-iron or a 4-iron.
Yeah.
And you backed me off the 2-iron because I had hit a 4-iron back on the par 5 for my third shot in a pretty similar wind. Or I had hit a really good shot into the wind. And so we just thought, like, you just hit a good shot with that. Or you thought. I kind of had 2-iron in my mind because I didn't think I could get it there. But you backed me off of it and put a 4-iron in my hand.
Well, I think it was one of those times where if you just look at a par 3 that's over water, it looks intimidating. But we had just had a similar type of shot. And the 2-iron, it's like you could potentially hit your 2-iron 280 yards. And we were talking about, like, I don't know how long the hole was, but let's say
it was like, I think it was like 195.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So, like, we could potentially be like 60 yards long with a 2-iron.
It wasn't going 60 yards. Yeah.
But still.
Yeah, a good 2-iron probably would have gone over in hindsight. But I didn't know that. I mean, the 4-iron I ended up hitting, I probably hit 245 or something.
And you made it to, like, the top tier of this par 3 green. And that was the moment I felt like, hey, we're kind of rolling. This is getting fun. This is getting fun here. Especially because, like, the other two guys were both playing pretty well at the time. And both hit decent shots, but weren't anywhere near where yours was. So that was a really, really good par there. Followed it up. 15th hole. We know we're in the mix. This was on the tee box. It was a par 5. And it was straight downwind. And I remember thinking, like, Sam in his head right now there's probably some adrenaline going. And this is Sam's type of hole. Sam's a big hitter. The last time we had a downwind par 5, you hit it like 410 yards. The air here is swinging too hard, trying to do too much, and just losing one because it was a little tighter window than the previous par 5 that we had downwind. And I was thinking, if Sam hits a good shot here, we're gonna cruise.
Yeah, I had the same thought. Because the wind kind of took the bunker out of play. I think it was like 335 or 340 to carry downhill, straight downwind. And so it's basically on those shots, the wind's not going to let the ball move. Just get the ball on the face, up into the air, point it at the fair, like it's going to go, and it's not going to turn much. And I was nervous about that drive. Before I started the day. The downhill, like, out of bounds left, hazard right. I know it's late in my round. I did not feel great about that drive.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's your classic, like, as a guy that can drive the ball, wouldn't it be cool to hit a great one here?
Yeah.
Like, downwind, downhill.
It's the long drive hole on a scramble.
Yes.
Where it's like, this is it. Go.
But
hit the fairway.
if you waste it, it's like, why did I even?
Yeah.
You know, I could have just laid up, right? And I was nervous watching. That was the one shot I was nervous about because I just knew, like, this one could be awesome. And you had a great shot. Even remember, speaking about that bunker, we couldn't really tell where it landed. And Tripp hit it a similar line as you, and he got what I thought was all of it as well. But he stuck his ball right on the lip of the bunker. So the bunker, to clear it, was like 335. He hit a great shot, kind of stuck right on the lip, but he was in the bunker. And at first, you thought that was our ball.
Well, I hit it bad, but it was one of those, like, it was a toe draw that probably would have gone, like, left rough. And so I didn't get all of it, but the wind just kept it straight. And so I thought, like, the only thing you couldn't do is just mishit it, basically, and not be able to carry that bunker. And so walking up, his ball was right on my line, and I thought, like, I can't believe I didn't carry the bunker because I thought I just mishit it enough.
And I remember being like, no, Sam, we're 50 yards up here. And that was a pretty great feeling. So anyway, birdie that hole. Once again, birdie that hole, you get to 2 over. And now, we didn't really think 2 over was great, but we thought 2 over was in the mix. What are you thinking when, you're through 15, you're at 2 over, nobody's under par? What's going through your head at that point?
At that point, there were enough holes left. The first time I remember really thinking, like, about the score or what it was, and I remember asking you a follow-up was going to 18 because I had parred 16 and 17. Yep. 17 was a really good up and down for par. And so once I escaped that, I think I asked you, and I was kind of asking you details about, I think I was more sure about the score than you were at 2 over. Like 2 over was in.
You were.
It was like 4th or 5th place, but all these guys had to play the last 2 holes, which were brutal, and right back into the wind. And so I thought, we're good at 2 over, basically, going to the last hole.
Yeah, so we're at 2 over. I think we had a conversation like par is good here.
Yeah.
And 18 straight into the wind. In our mind, or in my mind, like we hit a good first drive here, get it to where you need to be. We got an 8-iron in, and we've hit the 8-iron good all day. You hit a great drive. We get to that shot where it's uphill, 155 yards or so.
It was about 130.
Was it that?
Yeah.
Okay,
because it was a similar yardage to what I had earlier in the round with an 8-iron, and it was like uphill,
right,
into the in and off the left with the wind. So that's what sort of makes it so uncomfortable with that, because I'm hitting probably a 175 shot into a 130 or 135 yard shot. I mean the distance from the hole is about 130 yards, and I need to feel like I'm hitting it about 175.
And this was a time where. Now, the result ended up not being good. I'm spoiling it. Spoiler alert. But as like a caddy-player relationship, we had a legitimate conversation. Now, I think a lot of it was just talking it through, which is part of the job. But, like, we were checking the wind multiple times. At one point, we were thinking about the 7. I don't know why, but we were thinking about the 7. Ended up being an 8-iron that you pulled out of the bag, and then also you pulled an 8-iron. How does that happen, Sam?
So right before me, I watched Tripp hit it, and he hits a little draw, and I thought he started his pretty much at the pin, and the wind blew it like off its line, and it kind of rode the wind and went way long right, and I thought, that looks bad. Long right, can't be up there, and the bunkers are on the right, and then there's a front bunker that I thought I could carry up the left, and so I'm kind of aiming left and just thinking, like, just hit the middle, like hit a hard draw because the wind will hold it, and then it just went left. I don't know. I mean, it ended up just being a dead straight ball, but it just started too far left. So I hit the shot shape I wanted to. It just started too far left.
And what we know now, we're in a spot that, so 18th green has like a really heavy slope to it, and there's a bowl, and the pin was like on the bottom right in the bowl. So if you're like back left, or you're kind of middle left of the green,
Mm-hmm.
but you had to carry it on the green and use the bowl down into it. There was just no chance of holding that green with the way the greens were, and you looked at it from every different angle. I remember you asked me a couple of different times about like, what do you flop it way up here? Do you go straight at it? What's the best way to do it? But essentially, you hit a shot, the only shot you could, and it didn't hold the green. So you had, your par putt was uphill probably 30 feet. I don't know, 25, 30 feet.
Chipping from the rough.
Mm-hmm. You put it to about 4 feet short. And so at that point, we thought, at least I thought, you need to make the 3 here, but we're probably out at 3 over. And then you miss the 4-footer for bogey. And you double 18.
Yeah, doubled 18. It still stings. I can see it on your face. It feels good to see that hurt you still, because I'm not over it. I haven't played a golf.
I don't know if I'll ever get over it.
Yeah.
I mean, not like I don't know if I'll ever get over it, but it's just like, yeah, the heart sank. The heart sinks for those.
Yeah,
and I keep saying we as if like you and I have the same emotions on this. We I think we have similar emotions, but yours are different than mine. But we don't talk going off the green, right? And our boy Nate McCoy, Moonlighter, is lording over that green, sitting on top of the hill by the tree. And in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking like, God dang it, Nate McCoy. I don't know why I was hating on him, but I was just mad. So I was mad at everybody around. But at that point, we think it's over.
Yeah.
At least I did. Did you not?
I thought 3 was sort of okay, like the whole time. Just seeing the leaderboard, everybody had to play. 17 is probably harder than 18, and basically everybody was making bogey on 18. My whole group made at least bogey on 18. I think there was 2 bogeys in a double, or maybe a bogey and 2 doubles. And so I thought there was a lot of. At one point, I bounced to tied for 4th after the round. And there were 4 spots, but the last guy to finish was on the front 9, so he had that easy par 5. So he was probably always going to make birdie, and he did to knock me 1 out. But I thought, walking up 18, I still thought 3 was good.
Right.
But
4 dropped you at the time to like
9,
10.
Yeah,
it might have even
yeah.
been double
Yeah.
figures at that point, because there
Yeah.
was still, we were one of the earliest groups to get off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, top 10, but too many guys in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we leave. We go to Culver's. I steal the bib. Remember this?
You still, yeah.
I was so mad that I forgot to take the bib up. I just walked straight to my car.
They asked me in the scores tent, they were like, do you have your caddy bib? And I was like, oh, I'll run down and get it. And in my head, I was like, that man is halfway to Culver's.
I was already at Culver's.
The only thing we said to each other after the round was like, Culver's, yes. And then you went your way, I went mine. And I thought that bib might already be at Culver's right now.
I was literally at a stoplight when you called me. It's like, I'm sorry, I have it on still. I'm still wearing the bib. And so we go to Culver's, as is tradition. This is what we do. Win or lose, go to Culver's. So we go to Culver's, and while we're there, we order our Culver's Deluxes. You order the double, I order the deluxe. And we're sitting there commiserating, and you've got the live scoring pulled up on your phone. And it doesn't take us too long to realize that, like, everybody's struggling with the par 3, with 17, with 18, and the scores are rising. And you're going from, like, 10th to 8th to tied for 6th. And, I think you got a couple of notes from people at the course like, hey, man, you might want to come back here for a playoff.
Yeah, at that point, you kind of assume nobody's watching the scores because it's like, I'm not hearing from anybody. After you make 6 on 18, if the people in your life like you, you'll never hear about it. They didn't even know you were playing that day. And then I start moving up the board to like 6th, 5th, and then I start hearing from people, and it's like, oh, you guys were watching the scores. You did know what was going on today. And so I knew I was going to need to head back at some point. And I think they mentioned scoring. There might be a playoff at 4 or 3 or 4.
So there was a playoff,
mm-hmm.
and this is something we need to talk about. We have not talked about this yet. We need to talk about this now. You go back for the playoff, and your caddy does not.
Yeah.
I had to get home.
I mean, you're a family man. I get it. But at Culver's, you seem to be nervous in a different way about whether I was going in a playoff or not. I think toward the end, I said, Tim, you don't have to come back for the playoff.
I know. You let me off the hook for sure.
But in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, he's coming back for the playoff.
It was one of those things.
Walking out, I was like, I guess he's not coming back for the playoff, which makes absolute total sense. You've spent, in general, way too much time at the golf course with me. That specific day, I mean, we had been together for 8 or 9 hours. It's a long round out in the wind. You went to Culver's with me afterwards. It was a miserable day. And it was still like, he doesn't want to have his like 10th and 11th hour with me at Glen Oaks.
It was so hard for me to bail on this, but it was like, here's the thing. And you as a married man maybe could understand this. It was the whole thing at Culver's was the internal debate of, do I let Sam down or do I let my wife down? And by let my wife down, it means by calling her and asking for like, hey, I could potentially miss bedtime. Because like when you got a 2-year-old and 1-year-old twins, like missing bedtime's a big deal. And it was like, do I go to the well and pay for it, and you kind of let me off the hook because you beat me to the punch. You're like, Tim, you don't have to do this. Yeah. And every ounce of me wanted to be like, this would be great pod content. Like me in a caddying in a playoff. Are you kidding me? This is amazing. And the other part of me was like, oh man, I fear the wrath of an angry wife.
You absolutely made the right choice. But I was.
Did I? Because in hindsight, it kind of seems silly. It's
did.
like one night of bath time.
Well, I mean, there will be more disappointment on the golf course. I promise.
Well, there'll be more
Probably
bath
this
times.
year.
There'll be more bath times than disappointments.
Yeah, that's fair.
So anyway, let's go back through the playoff. So how many guys are in the playoff? What's the format?
So I finished tied for 5th with 4 spots. So just the worst place you can be. So there's 5 guys tied for 5th place, and you play for 2 alternates, a first alternate and a second alternate. And so basically you just play sudden death until you until you have the 1 and 2 seeds. And so we all tee off together, all 5 of us. We all play number 1. We all make par. And then we all tee off on 2. 2 guys hit it in the water. It's that par 3 down the hill.
Yep.
2 guys hit it in the water. 2 guys go right. And I was on the front fringe. And so the 2 guys from the right chip 6 feet or something. I'm on the fringe. I put it up the tap-in range, and one of them makes it. So then there's just 2 of us left. And so we have the 2 alternate spots. And in the back of my head, it's like sometimes an alternate gets in. If you happen to be high on the allotment list, it's a very confusing way they handle the alternates, and I kind of learned it this year. But I really did want the first alternate. It wasn't like I wanted to just mail it in. And so we went to the 3rd playoff hole, and we both made par. And then we went to the 4th playoff hole, and I made bogey, and he made par. So I got second alternate. So it was, to put it into perspective, I think we maybe teed off 45 minutes after I left Culver's, or maybe an hour.
For sure.
And we played 4 holes. So it was since after I left Culver's, it was 2+ hours since I was done.
Would a caddy have helped you?
Is there a right or a wrong answer here?
I mean, just honestly, do you think that like having somebody else carrying your bag, because that's the biggest thing, is like you wouldn't have needed my insight, but just it does shake up your rhythm. You did not carry your own bag the first 18 holes of the day, and then all of a sudden you're lugging it from the range 4 holes after you've already played a round of golf and eaten Culver's.
I was okay carrying the bag. That was fine.
Okay. So your second alternate, we didn't get in.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Sam's not playing in the U.S. Open.
No.
Sorry to disappoint all of you.
Yep.
Where do we go from here?
I think I hate to say we keep doing the same thing because it's not really working, but I think we kind of keep doing this.
I don't know. I don't know if it's not working.
I felt that was a better attempt. I will say this. I have doubled the last hole before to miss by 1 at this exact same tournament. So this is the second time I've done this in a very similar situation. Missed the green, bad chip, miss putt. But I will say this was so much better of an attempt than I made last year that it was encouraging.
There were glimpses of like
I played
Sam
12
really,
holes
really
of great
good.
golf.
Yeah.
And then just 6 awful.
Right. But part of that too was the wind was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the putting stuff, you almost can get a pass for that day because the wind was like you stepped away from the ball on the green. One of your most impressive putts, like you stepped away multiple times from a ball. You're standing over a putt. You stepped away multiple times and then made the putt. And I remember commenting like that was to have the discipline to step away and then the nerves to like regain your composure and go back and make the putt. That was tough. That's tough.
Yeah, it was a weird day on the greens. I never step off of putts. I mean, once I'm over it, I just go. I probably play too fast sometimes. I think you've mentioned that before. But I stepped off of a ton of putts the whole day.
All right. We'll keep doing the same thing, and we're going to get different results.
Perfect.
No,
when you put it like that, I don't know.
It's not like, you know, you've missed 18 cuts in a row. It's not like we're Ricky Barnes here. You know what I mean?
I'd love to be Ricky Barnes.
I know, but what I mean by
he's played in a bunch of U.S. Opens.
I guess I was looking at Duffner the other day. Like Duffner missed like 8 cuts in a row. And it's not like we're in that status. Now, granted, like Duffner's a major winner, but you know,
yeah,
we're talking about different things.
We got to dream bigger. You know,
I'll never forget being in Columbus during the rain out. right? And we're in the clubhouse, and I'm walking in the thing to go pee, and Duffner is spread eagle on the. Remember this?
No, I think you came back like wide-eyed. I just saw Duffnering. He did the thing.
He was spread eagle sleeping on the locker room floor. I'm not kidding when I say spread eagle. Like his arms and his legs were splayed out like, the Vesuvian man, on the floor. And I kind of had to step over his arm to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, there is major winner Jason Duffner taking a nap.
What'd he do wrong that he's in the same locker room as us?
Exactly.
He should be asking hard questions, not us.
Yeah. Who had a better day not making the U.S. Open that day?
Yeah.
Us
for sure.
So, all right, moving on. Golf talk. So the big underdog story in the golf world over the last month is Michael Block, right? Maybe the top PGA pro in 2022, and he's one of these guys. He gets a top 15 at the PGA Championship. This great underdog story. I'll be honest, this is a pod for the underdogs. The guy rubbed me wrong from day one. I didn't care for him.
This is amazing because I have not talked about this with you, and I could tell from your tone that we're on the same page here. I think it's because I'm way too deep in golf media that the second this guy came on the TV and they start talking about, look how good this guy is, look how well he's playing, this is amazing, I thought we're going to get so overexposed to this guy. I'm already sick of it. I just heard of this guy today, and I'm already sick of the Michael Block story. And we had not discussed this, but I think this is a very lonely corner to be on, but I'm glad you're in the same corner.
What I wanted from Michael Block, I wanted like frumpy-looking guy, down on his luck, wearing FootJoys that are 5 years too old, all this stuff. This guy's showing up in a different set of custom Jordans every day. Like, he's cocky, he's playing the media, he's whooping the crowd up, and I'm like, this is not how it's supposed to go. This isn't the underdog I like. I like, humble, self-deprecating. This guy's telling people if he drove it as far as Rory, he'd be number one in the world. Like, that's not what I want out of my underdogs.
Yeah. You could just feel that coming. It's like this man's eating the media up. He's about to do a ton of interviews. He's about to say something stupid, and he did.
He did. Yeah, you could see it. I thought it was going to happen on Sunday. So I'll tip my cap to him. The fact that he was able to keep it together through 4 rounds of the PGA Championship amongst all of the press that he was getting, tip of the cap to Michael Block.
Pretty crazy. I mean, he genuinely did, he played unbelievable golf. I think, did he shoot even every day or something close to that? I mean, it was...
Yeah.
Yeah. When he hit the hole-in-one on Sunday, it was just
incredible.
like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
I think it made me mad. I was probably the only person in the world that was mad, that was just like, we're never going to get rid of this guy.
I was actively cheering against him.
He was playing with Rory that day, too.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
And Rory handled it well.
Yeah.
Pro's pro.
Yeah.
When he made the hole-in-one, and at that point it was late in the round, and I was kind of like resigned to the fact that this guy's going to finish well. But I was watching it with my wife, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I just saw, because it landed on the fly.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those things that's kind of jarring.
Yeah.
And I said, Tori, the guy I was just talking about, the underdog? I was trying to explain her like how crazy this story was, and she couldn't care less. I said, he just made a hole-in-one. And she goes, does that happen a lot? I'm like, no, it happens like once or twice for a tournament amongst the top 100 players in the world. And like she was like, what do you mean? I was like, that's what I mean. It's like, this is crazy, and we just saw it happen. And so it was an amazing thing. But then sure enough, like, what happens the next 3 weeks? He gets the special invite to the next tournament, bombs, like shoots in the 80s 2 days in a row, doesn't qualify for the U.S. Open. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
And then, like, once again, awful at the RBC on Thursday, actually plays a pretty good round on Friday. I think he shot like a 68, but missed the cut by 1. So he rebounded a little bit, but like essentially 3 bad weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm. I think we're done with the Michael Block.
I think we're done with Michael Block.
Yeah. What a shooting star Michael Block was. I mean, just absolutely hot. I think when he showed up to the tournament the next week, I think it was at Charles Schwab, I think he said he had done like 30 interviews in between the PGA Championship and it was unbelievable. He couldn't get enough.
So at first I was like, this is a guy that I want to have on the pod. And then I was like, he's way too big for us, because he was signed by CAA by the end of the weekend. But then what's funny is like, what's CAA going to do with Michael Block now?
Yeah.
You know? Like, he's probably done with – they already fired him probably. And now I think he's back in the Moonlight. I think I could get Michael Block now.
Yeah,
3 weeks
probably.
later, I think he's back in our range.
The funny thing is that if I qualified for the U.S. Open and had an unbelievable week, and they're like, look at this amateur, unbelievable, like, he shouldn't be here, I would do so many interviews the next week and be like, oh, sure, I'll hop on with you. Yeah, of course, I'll do that one. I would do a ton of interviews. But for him, it's just like, come on, I'm sick of this guy. I'd get sick of myself.
You would never say, if I drove it like someone else or if I putted like somebody else, I'd be number one in the world. You would never say that.
That's crazy.
That's such a ridiculous thing
Yeah.
that it's like, I think he's in his 40s, right?
Yeah.
He's been around long enough to know better. That was the thing. It's one thing if it's like Bo Hostler as a 16-year-old saying that.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing is like, dude, you know better. You know why you haven't been on tour the last 20 years.
Yeah. If you truly have everything other than your driving was that world class, you'd be out there.
Right.
And also, the amount of people who have told me if I could just play from your drives. Like, I felt that in my boat. So
Yes.
If he said that, it's just like, oh, man, I can't. It's tough. It's also like, you think about the good drives, you don't think about the bad drives.
That's what I was saying.
You absolutely don't think about that. And then you don't think about having to swing that hard for a driver and then trying to hit a little 60-yard shot. It's tough. You can't just, no.
I'd like to have Michael Black on the podcast and not tell him how much I dislike him.
I'd like to join.
Yeah. And we'll suck up to him the entire time. And for the real Moonlighters, they've listened to this part. They've hung with us for like 45 minutes now, and they'll know it's like, these guys actually don't like this guy. Next golf story, Sam, because I've never been more interested in golf in the post-Tiger era than I am right now. The PGA Live thing, really, the Live thing in general was the biggest post-Tiger story we've ever had. Now the PGA Live merger is even more fascinating. Who's getting screwed? I think that's the real interesting part of this for me. I'm curious to find out not who are the big winners. I want to know who are the big losers in all this.
That's an interesting way to put it. The thing is that I don't think they know any details. So what did this come out a week ago?
Yeah.
Is it about a week ago? I don't even think they know details. So that when it first comes out, it's like, this is the craziest thing ever. Like, I wonder what any of the details are. It sounds like the four guys that put it together also don't know the details. Like, this is just a framework thing. They're going to invest in this new entity, roll up all the golf. And so it's really, really hard to say who winners and losers are. But my hunch at this point, I sort of thought initial losers is like the guys who stayed just look stupid. Like Rory looks stupid. Jay looks really stupid, like trotting out 9/11 families to garner sympathy, right, and then turning around and taking the money. And he still does. But I almost wonder, what happens to those Live guys? Because now it seems like Live's going away. Yeah. Like it didn't really work. Like it didn't get enough interest to kind of stand on its own. And then they're not going to. They said they're not going to run them concurrently with PGA Tour events, which leaves, I don't know, leaves an off-season team event. But I think it's just still, we have no idea how they would bring those guys back. And so if they are allowed to come back, they got their money, they got to come back, they kind of won. But if any of those guys get left out, maybe some of the lower Live guys, I don't know what happens to them.
Yeah, I guess my thought is the lower Live guys cashed in, and they made money while the money was good, and they probably, Chase Koepka wouldn't have his card anyway, so he did just fine. In my opinion, the losers are Greg Norman, a guy that sold, burned every bridge he had in golf for the Saudis, and now is being left on the wayside. And I think that shows you how shrewd the Saudis are, is that guy. Now, it seems like Phil Mickelson is kind of a winner in this, but I could see a world where Phil's in a similar boat as Norman, but Norman's going to have nobody less other than, he's going to have $1 billion. Now, granted, Norman, I'm sure, has plenty of money, but he has no relationships left in the golf world other than maybe the Live guys.
Yeah, that's tough. I think did he say 2 minutes or 10 minutes that he had called before the CNBC interview announcing it? I think they said they'd called Greg Norman in the last 10 minutes to tell him what was happening. That's crazy.
Crazy.
I mean, he was completely left out of it. You do, like, as obnoxious as he's been about a lot of things, you almost feel bad for him.
Yeah.
It's like he spearheaded this whole thing. He was the mascot. He was like, and
he was the
to
only
not have
guy
any
at one point.
idea. I mean, how embarrassing would that be? To be the face of this thing, its whole life, and then not even know it was being rolled up.
The PGA guy, Jay, what's his name?
Jay Monahan.
So, yeah, obviously, reputation suicide here.
Mm-hmm.
I do think they were hemorrhaging money for the, in the legal side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably got word from their connections in the Senate or wherever else that's like, hey, this is not going to go your way, or it's going to be another 4 years and you guys aren't going to be able to afford, to continue to battle this, or it potentially could not go your way. So when he says things like, with the information we had at the time, I think that's what it's alluding to. It's like, oh, no. From a legal standpoint, we were not going to win against the LIV because, like, the stuff in discovery that would come out and all that other stuff, just from an antitrust standpoint, wasn't going to be good. But, like, that doesn't change Jay Monahan's reputation. Is going to be sullied forever, but he's probably going to walk away with a pile of cash.
Yeah. I think the only thing that makes sense is that the PGA Tour was running out of money. I think the Saudi Arabian side did not want discovery. I think they wanted discovery to stop. And I don't know where all the lawsuits stood, but I think that in the PGA Tour wanted them all to stop because they couldn't handle the cash burn.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing with all their increased purses. I think they went to their players. They kind of panicked with the LIV stuff, doubled a lot of their purses, and then they went to their sponsors and got no's back, basically.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that makes sense given how firm their stance was for the last year, and then just to surprise this deal. And Jay's not an idiot. He knows how bad he's going to look. I mean, he knows how many uncomfortable interviews he's going to have to give and explain why he said what he said last year, and then why he did this. And so given that he knows how bad that's going to look, it had to be ugly. I mean, it had to be just the PGA Tour was completely unsustainable on that.
Yeah, because they essentially rushed to the bargaining table.
Yeah. And they said they wanted to they wanted to do it when they were in a position of strength, but there's no way. There's just no way that they were.
I also think the losers are going to be, once again, like just the middle of the pack PGA guys that stuck around, maybe could have taken $20 million from LIV. I'm not even talking about like the Ricky Fowlers or the Jordan Spieths. I'm talking about like, Moonlighter, Troy Merritt, that could have gone over there maybe for a $5 million signing bonus or a $10 million signing bonus just to be another guy who they're talking about equity in the new deal. It's not going to be middle of the pack PGA guys.
Yeah.
Right. So the guys like like we said, the Jason Duffners, some of these guys that actually have a name because they won a major, but like showed loyalty to the PGA, they're not going to get equity in the new deal. Those guys actually should have taken the money when they could.
Yeah.
Like Spieth and Rahm and Rory, those guys are going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Ricky, even because of his popularity, just fine. But like, I don't know, some of those middle tier PGA guys, I don't know, because all of a sudden, like
the only thing they have going for them is that my guess, and they obviously they wouldn't have to do this because now it's like it's for profit. There is no other competition. Is that I would imagine the purses are going to maintain or increase. And so if you're one of those guys,
there's no competition.
I get that too, but I would say the same thing about the top guys. And I know Jay said they'll be made whole, but again, why for them? There's no they don't have to. And then now, do the PGA Tour players have to unionize like any other sport? Like if they're, if you're just a regular PGA Tour player, prior to that, they were independent contractors because it was a nonprofit. So everything that comes in goes out minus like whatever you were holding in reserves for COVID or a foreign government trying to start a new league and poach all your guys. So now that it's a for-profit entity, I have no idea how any of that goes.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see play out.
But I imagine they pile money in. I mean, I imagine you don't want to incentivize anybody to try to do something on their own.
The purses already are out of control.
Yeah.
Like, the purses are out of control, and they didn't really limit the schedule.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they kind of kept the bloated schedule the way it was.
Their mandate was just to get as many starts for as many people. So it's like they're just getting as many events. And they kind of went away with that, from that with some of the limited field stuff, but we never even got to see any of that. And maybe that stays pretty much the same next week. So is it Greg Norman?
Well, I think so. Norman, Monahan, big losers. I also think, like those middle tier guys that didn't take the money, and now you bring the live guys back, and they're potentially, going to be losing their PGA cards here in a couple of years because all these live guys are going to be back on the tour.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're the losers, and they're not going to be showed loyalty from the tour because they're middle tier. They're not going to get equity, and they might be losing their card here in a couple of years anyway.
That's when you put it like that, they do. they sort of sound like losers.
Yeah.
I think Phil is a sneaky loser because I think he was one of the most universally well liked athletes like ever. Like you think of big smiles, thumbs up, and regardless of like whether you think he was right or wrong, like he's now not nearly as universally well liked as he. And maybe he doesn't really care about that, but it kind of seems like he does.
But his reputation is better now than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
The merger was a win for him. He was at his worst like when the Shipnuck book came out.
Yeah.
And
I would agree with that. The only pushback is that when he was saying like I was right. Look at all these moves the PGA Tour made to increase purses. Like, I was right the whole time. And then it bankrupted the tour. So I don't know. Like, he wasn't fully right. But I think part of what he was pushing for was for an investment like this.
Well, he was clearly
and probably
right.
And wasn't happening. Like, that wasn't going to happen without. He's absolutely right about, like, things were not going to change without that. And whether this is better or not is probably more
Chambly was a big loser.
Yeah. That's tough.
Tough. Fatherhood, Sam.
What about it?
You're becoming a dad.
I am.
How are you feeling about it?
Pretty good. It was like it feels like it happened very slowly and then all at once. It hasn't even happened yet, but like winter months, when you schedule something in the it's like
it's called lovemaking, Sam. It happens, starts off pretty slowly, and then everything ends kind of all at once.
So I'll ignore that. When it's in the middle of the winter and it's like something scheduled for late summer or midsummer, I'm like, like that's so far away. And then once it gets warm, it's like, oh, it's right around the corner. Like, it's right here. So it's coming fast, right in the middle of golf season, which is,
could have planned better,
but working around it.
So, I texted you this question earlier today. As a baseball player, there's just this dream of like playing catch with my kids in the backyard. And, Field of Dreams, of course, there's, hey, Dad, want to have a catch? What's the golf equivalent of like playing catch with your dad in the backyard?
I thought about this for way too long and came up with no good answers. There's not like are you chipping in the basement, or like there's no mini version of golf that sort of simulates it, because you can actually play the game, like the full game,
right,
with your dad. Like you and your dad can't play a full baseball game. I don't think. I'm not a baseball guy,
you can't.
But
right, like a round of golf is too much.
So it's like, but that feels wrong too because it's too big.
I thought about this as well. That's why I texted the question. In my mind, it's not the exact same. But it's just like watching the final round of the Masters with your dad. Like you're not experiencing it in the same way, but just how playing a game of catch, a lot goes unsaid. Similar to like, there's a lot of emotion. That, CBS broadcasts, they do a lot of emotion. Final round of the Masters, they play the history through the years, so you're kind of going through the years with your dad at the same time. Like, Dad, remember when Tiger chipped in? Do you remember when, some of that stuff, those type of stories with your dad? And so you're kind of going back through all the times you also watched the Masters with your dad is similar to playing catch because you're reminiscing a little bit when you play catch a lot of times.
That's why you're a pro. Better answer than me.
All right. You don't know if it's a boy or a girl, right?
No. Surprise.
What are we going to be like as far as pushing our kid towards golf?
I don't want to be pushy, but I really want him to like golf. It would.
You want them
it
to
would
like
be-
golf,
I want them to like golf,
like playing.
but I don't know
golf.
how much. Like playing golf, watching golf would be ideal too.
Right.
But specifically playing golf, that would be so convenient for me. You know, it's my favorite hobby. The kid could do it too. That'd be
You
great.
get like extra dad points, like,
yeah.
hey, Olivia, me and the kid, we're going out for a round. And then she gets 5 hours on her own. You get dad bonus points. But really, like, you're working on the game. We got a qualifier
I'm
here in a month.
grinding. The U.S. Open doesn't stop just because I have a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thought. Those little kid Masters bibs. Okay. Hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
We qualify for the Masters. Right. So qualify for the U.S. Open, top 10 finish, qualify for the Masters the next year. I'm not sure what it takes to qualify at the U.S. Open to get into the Masters.
We'll do what
as
we
an
have to
amateur.
do when we
But
get to the U.S.
regardless,
Open.
We'll
Yeah.
look into that later. We're playing in the Masters par 3. Let's say your kid's 3 or 4 at the time.
Mm.
You know, Fitz would be 6. Let's say Fitz is 6, your kid's 4. Does my kid get Masters bibs too, or is it just your kid?
That is not where I thought you were going with that question at all. I think everybody could get it, you know?
Yeah, I wonder if I feel like
Nobody's
Augusta
gonna
just
stop.
Augusta's not going to say no to like any requests made by the players.
That is the funny thing, and I thought about it. Every year the par 3 tournament gets more and more like family friendly.
Right.
It's a one-way train. Who's going to go out and be like,
You can't reel it back.
I'm sorry, Tony Finau. 3 kids. You got to
Right.
pick the top. Like, you can't reel that back in. So every year. So by the time, give me next year off. You know, a lot going on.
Yeah,
young
yeah.
kid. 2 years from now.
Oh, I
This
was
all
thinking like
happens.
26.
Okay,
We
yeah.
got plenty of time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay.
I can't see a world where they say like, "Now Fitz, you can't come."
Here's a question then. If we give Fitz bibs, then the Twins will probably want bibs too.
Well,
But then here's the thing: how mad would Matt be if my kids have Masters bibs, but his kids don't? Because he's family.
yeah, that's tough. Because that I would have to draw the line at some point.
Then it comes
You know.
back to you. Like
Yeah.
this isn't Augusta.
Augusta might
we
not,
could blame Augusta.
But somebody needs to draw the line.
How would Olivia feel about wearing the bibs? Oh, I guess this is a better question. Maybe this is where I originally should have gone. I'm just assuming I'm on the bag,
Yeah.
but this is a family thing. I'm probably getting boxed out. Olivia's probably on the bag.
You said you'd be on the bag, and I didn't even flinch.
I'm-
Like, of course you'd be on the bag. We're playing. This,
reality. I'm at Hooters
competing.
across the street with Daly.
I'm competing for the real thing. None of this pick it up, have your kid hit the last shot. Unless it's not going well. But I'm trying to win the thing.
Here's the thing,
And-
Sam. We should make this deal now. Put it up, paper. No par 3 champion has ever won the Masters.
Yeah.
We don't care.
We don't-
We're not trying to win the Masters. We're trying to win the par 3.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going in, if you're handicapping which one I got a chance at, I'm probably feeling pretty good about my game if I'm at the Masters. I did something that I haven't even sniffed so far in my
The
golfing
course
life.
suits your eye.
The course suits my eye. Love the course. I'm trying to win the par 3.
I think we're trying to win the par 3 because
I think I'm playing practice rounds on the par 3 leading up to.
we're the only
tournament.
guys doing it.
Yeah. Who else is asking for a pin sheet and playing practice rounds on the par 3 course?
Chances are, Fitz gets a little over his skis. You know that Rusilla reference?
No.
Anyway, we'll talk about it later. Chances are, like, we're in the running for the par 3. Fitz gets a little bit like, he's got a job now because he's got the bibs on, and he moves illegally and actually has to take a penalty on the par 3, which blows it for us. Fitz loves golf balls. He thinks every golf ball is his.
He's going to have to get over that by the time we play in this.
Yeah. Well, Sam, so we got a lot going on. You got a kid on the way. July due date.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a 4-ball. There's a mid-AM. There's a USAM qualifier. A lot going on. So next time we hear from you, Will it be because you had a kid or because we're playing golf again?
It's a toss-up at this point. I'm signing up for tournaments like I'm not having a kid. We can cancel whatever we need to cancel. So
Yep.
we're ready for both.
Moonlight Graham is back. Show is back. Sam, thanks for coming back on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and thank you guys for all the kind words you guys have shared over the past week. You know, I told a little story about my grandma on last week's episode, and it was also great to hear, you know, the kind words many of you shared about my grandma, but also the kind words you shared about having the pod back. You know, we took about a 5-month absence there, but the pod is back. We are going strong, and we've got a lot of fun things prepared. Special thanks to the Moonlight Graham Show team, Brian Sandvig, Tommy Griffin, Neil Flattery, Andy Flattery, and the incomparable Brendan Gargano. Have a great week, Moonlighters.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.